Imagine this. Secret Service agents patrol the halls with trained precision, their earpieces alive with whispers. Advisors shuffle papers in the West Wing. Staffers hurry between meetings, and the president sits in the Oval Office, pen in hand. Everything seems normal, until a scream cuts through the night. A scream that does not belong in these walls of power. The first reports come from the kitchen. A chef, trembling, his uniform soaked in blood, his eyes clouded with something unnatural. He lunges at his colleague with inhuman strength, tearing flesh like paper. Security rushes in, guns raised, but hesitation costs them precious seconds. The infection spreads. One by one, guards and staff collapse under the weight of something far more dangerous than politics. Within minutes, the safest building in the world becomes ground zero for the dead. What would you do if the heart of American power was suddenly ruled not by politicians, but by predators? Inside, panic erupts. The president is rushed to the underground bunker, the one designed to withstand nuclear war. But this isn't a war of bombs, it's a war of bites. The corridors of the White House, once echoing with footsteps and briefings, now echo with snarls and the tearing of flesh. Blood stains the presidential seal. The Situation Room, where crises are usually solved, becomes a battlefield. The Secret Service, trained for every imaginable threat, finds themselves fighting an enemy they can't negotiate with. No speeches, no diplomacy, only hunger. They fire, they retreat, they barricade. But every gunshot draws more attention. Every wound risks turning an ally into an enemy. How long could you last in a place where every corner could hold your former colleague, now shambling with lifeless eyes? Outside, the world watches. Cameras fixed on the White House lawn capture shadows darting behind the windows. The press reports rumors of an incident, but the truth is worse than anyone dares to say aloud. The most secure building in America has become a prison for the living. And soon, the infection will not stop at the gates. Think about it. If the White House falls, what happens next? The military is deployed, jets streaking across the night sky, helicopters circling overhead. Snipers take positions on rooftops. Floodlights illuminate the mansion as soldiers move in. But the question lingers. Do they rescue the president, or do they contain the infection at all costs? This is the terrible dilemma of leadership in crisis. Save the figurehead of democracy, risking lives and unleashing the plague beyond the gates, or sacrifice him for the greater good of humanity. Which choice would you make? The battle inside grows more desperate. Imagine soldiers moving room to room, clearing the historic halls once walked by presidents, now crawling with the undead. The Blue Room, the Lincoln Bedroom, the Cabinet Room, all reduced to stages of horror. The chandeliers drip not with crystal light, but with blood. Paintings of past leaders watch silently as chaos unfolds beneath them. History itself seems to shiver. And then the bunker. Buried deep beneath the White House, sealed with steel doors, meant to protect the president and his closest advisors. But what if the infection has already reached it? What if one bodyguard, bitten but silent, made it inside? In a confined space, no escape, the infection spreads like wildfire. The last safe place becomes the final trap. Can you imagine the terror of realizing there is nowhere left to run? The military above faces a brutal decision: containment. If the infection breaks free, Washington, D.C., a city of millions, will fall in days. And if Washington falls, how long before the entire nation is consumed? The White House, once a symbol of hope, could become the match that lights a global fire. Now picture the panic spreading through the world. Global leaders watching live feeds, nations holding emergency meetings, stock markets crashing overnight, citizens glued to their screens, asking one question: if even the White House can fall, is anyone truly safe? Airlines shut down. Highways clog with desperate families fleeing cities. Supermarkets are raided. Fear itself becomes contagious. In moments, society begins to fracture. And all because the first spark of the apocalypse ignited in the very center of power. But let's step back. What makes this scenario so terrifying isn't just the zombies. It's the symbolism. The White House is supposed to represent stability, order, control. If that crumbles, if the most fortified building in America can fall in hours, then what does that say about the rest of us? How fragile is civilization, really? Now imagine the president still alive, but cornered. The leader of the free world clutching a weapon in a dark corridor, hearing the snarls closing in. Surrounded not by advisors and allies, but by the walking dead. Cameras cut off, communication lines down, the world left guessing his fate. Does he escape with a daring rescue? Or does he become the most famous victim in human history? And here is where your imagination must take over. Would the military succeed in sealing the White House, turning it into a tomb for the infected? Or would mistakes, hesitation, or human emotion let even one creature slip out into the streets of Washington? Because if even one does, the infection spreads unchecked. From Capitol Hill to New York, from coast to coast, the fall would be unstoppable. Think about your own life for a moment. Where would you go? Who would you trust? Could you protect your family if the infection spread beyond those gates and into your city? The nightmare of the White House is really a mirror, showing us how unprepared we are for collapse. The zombie apocalypse starting in the White House is more than a horror fantasy. It's a thought experiment about power, vulnerability, and survival. It forces us to ask, what happens when the systems we depend on fail, not slowly, but in a single night of chaos? Would leaders protect the people or themselves? Would nations unite against a common enemy or collapse into fear and division? And most chilling of all, how quickly would civilization dissolve into instinct, hunger, and violence? The White House under siege is the ultimate symbol, a reminder that no matter how strong our walls, how many guards we post, or how powerful our leaders seem, we are always just one disaster away from ruin. Power cannot stop hunger. Authority cannot stop infection. And even the most guarded place in the world can become a tomb. So ask yourself this: if tomorrow the news broke that the White House had gone dark, if live cameras showed only chaos and fire within those walls, what would you do? Would you run? Would you fight? Or would you realize, perhaps too late, that the apocalypse doesn't start with the collapse of buildings, it starts with the collapse of belief? And in that silence, in that moment of fear, the question remains: if the zombie apocalypse can begin at the White House, where will it end?